Welcome to the final episode of Why We Love Graps. Today, I am going to go through the interviews I did with all four people and break them down a little bit, provide some takeaways that I had. So let's go ahead and start with Ella J. Ella J is a professional wrestling writer and freelancer. She does work for a few different sites, such as Wrestling Inc. and WrestleZone. She also does interviews for that site as well. We also had Sean Ross Sapp. Sean Ross Sapp can best be defined as the Adrian Wojnarowski of professional wrestling. He breaks most wrestling news, the top tier news. That is Sean Ross Sapp's job. He is also an active wrestler doing matches every once in a while on the independent scene in his area. He worked a match recently in Kentucky or near Kentucky. He also worked a match in Illinois a few months ago. So he is an active wrestler technically, and a professional wrestling journalist who mainly breaks news. He also does podcasts for Fightful.com. Cam Hawkins. Cam Hawkins is a writer for The Ringer. He's also friends with a bunch of people in the professional wrestling industry. So I thought that that was a voice I really wanted to add into this project. It's obviously, I think everybody that I interviewed has connections in the industry, but Cam's friendships I thought was just so unique the way he handles it. So, that's Cam Hawkins from The Ringer. I also had Kate Elizabeth, also from Fightful. She does podcasts as well for the Mark Order podcast and her own channel. Kate mainly just does podcasts. A bunch of people here do podcasts, writing, a few different things, reporting. Kate is just podcast. She also does some commentary for a promotion I believe is called Excite Wrestling. So those are the 4 people I interviewed, and something that I took away from the interviews immediately was everybody has a different reason why they love wrestling just from their basic viewpoint into the industry. Ella was unique to me because of how she resonated with certain people based off of them being similar to her. She brought up Saraya, aka Paige, formerly known as Paige in WWE. She's now in AEW as Saraya, and Saraya being a pale girl that was not very common in WWE back in the early 2000s, going into the 2010s. So having somebody like that for her really meant a lot to her growing up and helped her with some of her insecurities. She also talked about how she also loves in ring the cruiserweights, like a John Morrison was somebody who I remember her specifically bringing up. She has a few different loves, but her just gravitating towards people who are similar to her and look like her and speak to her, I thought that that was such an interesting point of view. There was also Sean's point as a reporter. Everybody has something different, has a different job who I talk to in media, and Sean breaking the news is so different from everybody else because of how prominent his reporting is in the space. So I thought that that was interesting, him talking about that a little bit and how that shapes his love of professional wrestling. Also, being an active wrestler, getting in there and training, that's something that I hope to do in media. And I think a lot of people in wrestling media in general should do. You should get in the ropes, get between the ropes, and work and train and know what you're doing because there is a viewpoint you can have outside. There's a lot of people who never played basketball or football professionally who cover football and basketball, but wrestling is so unique that you need to have at least stepped through those ropes because I'm sure people played pickup football as a kid or flag or high school, whatever. But most people have not have not actually taken a bump and wrestled. So Sean doing that, I thought that just gave a different perspective than anybody else because none of the other people have bumped and have actually trained and worked matches. It's unique to him. Kate was one of my favorite conversations. Kate and Cam's conversations were my 2 favorite because of her you can hear the love of wrestling that she has, specifically for technical wrestling. Kate loves it. She talks about it constantly online, and more than anybody else, I think that out of, people I interviewed, Kate really just talks about her love of wrestling as much as possible, and she loves grappling, she loves technical wrestling, and I thought that came through about, like, her love of in-ring was what really stood out to me compared to everybody else. I talked about Ella's love of people who resonate with her. Cam talked about the pain of wrestling that I'll talk about in a little bit too, but Kate really spent most of her time just talking about how much the in-ring means to her, and that stood out to me. Cam, being friends with people, I thought was something that was so important when I talked to him. I wanted to bring that up because Sean has friends in the industry, Kate has friends in the industry, Ella has friends in the industry, everybody does. But Sean's friends in, or sorry, Cam's friends in the industry is such a it's a different level of friendship. I talked about how people in the industry or people online, we call him the guidance counselor of professional wrestling, and he called himself the uncle of a lot of wrestlers, and I thought that was very accurate. He just shows love to as many people as possible, and it's not for any gain. He's not trying to gain anything in media. And I'm not saying that the other friendships um, are not real that other people have, but Cam isn't do like, there are a lot of people who do it just to network. A lot of things in any journalism business is you're gaining sources and you're networking. Cam doesn't care about that. That's not his intention. It's all about love for him, and knowing these people on a personal level provides something so unique to his viewing experience watching pro wrestling, and I've been able to be with him when he's watched some of his close friends in matches, and that man does not care about the actual story. He cares a little about the story, but he doesn't really care about wrestling the way I care about it when I'm watching. I just wanna watch, like, a really good match and enjoy the story, but he cares about it because he loves these people with all of his heart, and he wants them to succeed, and I love that. I loved his explanation of that. I wanna also go into each of the one-word answers that they gave me. I asked them, "In one word, explain why you love Graps." I asked them the title of the series, and every single one was different, and I loved how different they were. Sean gave a hyphenated, all-encompassing. Ella cheated a little bit, also tried to give a hyphenated, not as not as much hyphenated, but, I let it work. Athletic escape. Kate said emotional connection. Again, hyphenated, cheating a little bit, and Cam was the only one who gave a legitimate one-word answer, which was pain. So to go through Sean's all-encompassing, it's everything. The story, the in-ring, wrestling has something for everybody, and it provides everything in it, and I liked that answer from Sean about how much he loves that. It's a little bit cheating because it is a very broad topic, but that makes sense to me. I think that some people just like how much wrestling has to offer, and so that was a unique answer from Sean that I didn't really get as much out of everybody else in all the interviews. Nobody else really brought up how complete professional wrestling is. Kate, emotional connection. Having that emotional connection in professional wrestling is so important. She talked about how much she loves Graps, but she also has an emotional connection to somebody like a Zack Sabre Jr. or a Bryan Danielson. And when you're emotionally invested in a match, especially when the match is like really good, like 4 and 3/4, 5 stars, higher, it makes the match so much better. From my personal experience that I want to add in here as I'm doing these takeaways, I got to be in person for Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson, which was my personal dream match to the 2 favorite wrestlers that I've had, and when you ask me my favorite wrestler, it genuinely can flip-flop depending on who I thought had the better match that week, and being in the building for that was so special. That match was incredible, one of the best matches I've ever seen, but I also had an emotional investment because of how much I love these 2 guys, and it just nothing is better to me than watching an amazing match that you are emotionally invested in. There's so many great matches where the moves are incredible, but if there's no emotional investment, if you don't care about what's happening in the ring, there's only so much that they can do. You need to care, you need to have emotional investment, and that's something that I love that Kate explained it too. Ella, athletic escape, talking about the in-ring a little bit. Wrestling is an athletic escape. It's very athletically based. Of course, it's professional wrestling. You have to be an athlete to do it. So I thought that that was interesting that she gave that answer because it combines the in-ring, the athletic part of it, also when she talked about being able to fall in love with people who were similar to her, like Paige, like I mentioned a little bit ago, that is where the escape comes in. There is a level of escapism to professional wrestling that I think all fans of wrestling have used wrestling as an escape tool at some point in their life. So I liked Ella bringing that up because, again, something that just didn't get brought up by anybody else. And I'm gonna hammer that in that like everybody truly had unique point of views, no matter how similar all these people are. Multiple people who do podcasts, multiple people who write or have done writing at some point. Sean might be the only one who really breaks news, but still, like, these people are all working in wrestling media in some capacity, but they all provided something different, even though I think I ended up having I had over 90 minutes worth of content or around that I had over 90 minutes worth of content, and still everybody gave different answers. It's just incredible. It shows how unique professional wrestling is and how vast it is. So going into Cam's answer, Cam talked about pain, and this one really stood out to me because it's not I immediately was like, "Oh, just the pain of working a professional wrestling match," but no, he talked about the emotional pain, and you're getting older and losing people and how just how he uses wrestling and how that relates to wrestling, and it goes a little bit with emotional connection, but on a much deeper, much more personal level. And I thought that worked really well when you know about his connections with pro wrestlers, and that just stood out to me because it does still mean a little bit about the pain of a professional wrestling match, but when you really get in there, there's much more that I thought Cam added beautifully. He really just Cam's very good with his words, and I thought that he worded that answer incredibly in a way that in my own words, I cannot even get close to summing it up as well as he did. That was I really liked that answer. That was probably my favorite, like, quote that I had heard, I guess elongated quote, but my favorite thing that was said in any interview was Ham's answer on why he loves Graps and pain as the reason. So, my final takeaways from this were, like I said, wrestling is so vast and unique and extraordinary in how everybody who likes wrestling likes it for different reasons, and certain things overlap here and there. In ring, wanting to have an emotional connection in a match, wanting to be enthralled in the storylines. There were overlaps at points, but everybody really did have a unique reason for why they loved wrestling, and they talked about different things. I didn't really think anything got, like, straight up repeated. There were, like, similar themes, obviously, but nobody really said the exact same thing. Ella bringing up John Morrison, Cam talking about the Usos and how he likes them over the Young Bucks because of their stuff looking like it hurts. Sean talking about the reporting aspect of it, Kate talking about technical wrestling, all just very different things in professional wrestling and why you love professional wrestling. So that's my biggest takeaway. It's just really how vast professional wrestling is, and it really is the ultimate art form. I've been saying this for so long when I talk to people. I had a conversation with a friend the other day where I called wrestling the purest art form, the ultimate art form, more than music, more than painting, more than drawing, more than movies or TV shows. I think wrestling is the purest art form because everybody has a unique takeaway. You will never if you watch a professional wrestling match and you talk to 100 fans, 1,000 fans, a million fans, you will never find someone with the exact same take on it. People like to copy other people, sure, that happens all the time, and really in any industry, you see this reviewer put out a review and some person decides I'm gonna have the exact same opinion on it. That happens in professional wrestling a lot, but if you ask them before they had seen the review and they don't have the chance to, like, just be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna copy the answer," then you'll find out that everybody does have a different reason for loving professional wrestling, a different reason for liking a match or disliking a match, different take on it. Nobody's opinions are going to be the exact same. There will be at least some variation in the answer, and that is why I love professional wrestling. I talked about how all these 4 people did. Why do I love Graps? It's because of how different it is from anything and how everybody is going to see something through a different lens, and I love talking to people who love professional wrestling like me. That's part of the reason I did this. I wanted to talk to other people about the love of professional wrestling, the love of the game, and I can learn their point of view and why they love something so much. And while I might have a different reason, like with Cam, he loves the Usos and thinks they're better than the Bucks. I personally, I like the Usos. I think the Bucks are a million times better, just from what I like in professional wrestling. And having that conversation with him that we've had a million times, but having it in this format where we could talk a lot more about when like breaking it down a lot more than just if you're in a conversation with somebody just like at a bar, you're not gonna really be able to get into it, like, actually breaking down why we like it, and being able to break it down here, I thought was so special because that's just what I love about wrestling. I just like talking to people about it and learning why they like something or why they didn't. Going back to that Bryan Danielson Will Ospreay match, I have my reasons for loving it. I got to do a podcast talking about it and hearing how the co-host that I did it with, how he thought about it. And while we both thought it was awesome, we both had different reasons for how much we loved it. It's so special to me. Being able to talk about it, it just makes me incredibly happy, and it's why I love Graps. So that is the final episode of Why We Love Graps. I talked to Kate Elizabeth, Sean Ross Sapp, Ella J, and Cam Hawkins. And then you guys got my final feelings on why I love Graps in this episode. Thank you so much for watching this series. I really appreciate it. And for the final time, see y'all later.